Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we have some holiday safety tips, and we spoke to George from the TV show George to the Rescue about AFCIs, and we'd like to thank Jonas Grumby for a review in Castbox. In the 1920s and 1930s, childhood poisoning was recognized as a big problem in the U.S., but there wasn't a lot of information available about what products were toxic and what to do. So a pharmacist at St. Luke's Hospital started a poison information service in the 1930s, and it wasn't until 1953 that the first poison control center was created in Chicago. In 1958, the American Association of Poison Control Centers was created, and the CDC says that unintentional poisoning is now the leading cause of injury deaths. I spoke to Lindsay from Poison Control, and she said if you have small kids, you need to be careful of where...
Is she like famous at Poison Control?
Yes, she loves podcasting. And she said all the people at Poison Control love listening to podcasts, so they probably have to be, quiet while they're helping people on the phone. Anyway, you need to be careful where people are putting bags and purses if you have relatives or friends visiting for the holidays. Kids see prescription pills in a sandwich bag or a pill case and want to see what they are, and there are a lot...
They're candy.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of accidental poisonings from guests not keeping pills out of reach. And another problem during the holidays are button batteries, so those small coin-shaped lithium batteries. If they're swallowed, they can rupture and cause serious injury or death. The National Capital Poison Center says there's about 3,500 people who swallow batteries every year.
Wow.
And the Battery Poison Center can be called at 1-800-498-8666, and you should have that number, especially if you have kids around the house, if somebody swallows a battery.
Okay.
For poisoning, the National Poison Center, their number is 1-800-222-1222. It's free, it's confidential, and they say that most accidental poisonings can be helped with their service, but if the person is having trouble breathing, they have a seizure, if they collapse, or they can't be wakened, you should call 911 immediately. And in 2016, the U.S. Poison Control Centers helped over 2 million people.
Wow. And
the biggest group was 1 and 2-year-olds. And you can check out their website at poison.org, so it's poison.org. It's a great resource for information. They follow trends. They have a newsletter. They have jingles that you can listen to.
That you made me listen to all day?
They're very catchy. You can't get it out of your head. You will know 1-800-222-1222. And you can also text POISON to 484848 on your phone, and it will download the poison control number into your phone and some information. And that's a nice number to have in your phone. Unless you listen to the jingle, then you'll never forget it. The U.S. Department of Health says to prevent food poisoning during the holidays, cook your food well and always use a meat thermometer to test it.
Shouldn't you do this all the time? Not just during the holiday?
Yeah, start in the holidays to get the habit down. Because most people, you can't tell whether it's done just by touch or sight, like you see the chefs do on TV.
Right, and they're not doing a good job.
Right. So steaks, roast, and chops should be a minimum of 145 degrees.
When you're using the thermometer, you need to use it in the thickest part of the meat.
Okay.
Don't touch bone or fat.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fish, 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Ground beef, ground pork, veal, or lamb should be 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Turkey, chicken, or duck, 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And they're also saying don't rinse off raw meat or poultry before you cook it. The splashing water they found spreads bacteria to all the surrounding surfaces. You get it on your clothes, on your hands, your arms. Just by cooking it to the minimum recommended temperature, it's going to kill all that bacteria, so you don't have to worry about rinsing it off.
My mom always told me to wash chicken before I cooked it.
Right.
But it didn't make any sense to me because all that bacteria then is getting all over your,
Everything.
faucet. You're getting your sink, any dishes that are around it.
Setting stuff on it, yeah.
I can't just cook it.
When you're shopping, keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood away from other food that you won't be cooking. Use the plastic bags they provide in grocery stores to help prevent meats from leaking on other food.
So like the big ones on the roll?
Yeah, just so even if they have meat packed in plastic, they're recommending that you put it into a plastic bag in your cart, right, to prevent leaks. You want to buy all your food that needs to be kept cold last. The long lines in stores around the holidays and traffic getting home can leave your food out too long. Use a specific cutting board for meat. Purdue, they recommend using plastic cutting boards for chicken. Old wood cutting boards can hold bacteria. And don't allow poultry or its juices to touch other foods, especially fruits and vegetables.
I think I have 4 cutting boards.
Yeah, it's smart.
3 nice wood ones and then 1 plastic one I only use for meat.
Very smart. When you're working with chicken, they say remove any plastic or wrapping and dispose of it immediately. Before and after handling raw poultry, wash your hands with hot soapy water, and then afterwards wash your hands, your cutting boards, your knives, your counter, your sink, any plates or work surfaces that you used to prevent food poisoning.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work not to get sick.
Yeah. The CDC says wash your hands before, during, and after food prep, and their method is to wet your hands, turn off the water, then use soap and rub briskly all over the top and bottom of your hands, between your fingers, on your nails. They're saying a minimum of 20 seconds. Longer is better.
You could sing the happy birthday song twice.
There you go. Easy way to know how long 20 seconds is. And then you want to rinse thoroughly. The CDC says using soap and water is one of the best ways to reduce microbes in most situations. Hand sanitizers aren't as effective when your hands are dirty or greasy, and hand sanitizers aren't going to remove many harmful pesticides and chemicals. They also say don't taste unbaked dough or batter, and to wash your hands and surfaces well after handling raw eggs and flour. There can be E. coli in flour and salmonella in raw eggs. You should refrigerate or freeze your leftovers as soon as possible. In hot weather or direct sun, you should get it in the fridge within an hour. Most food within 2 hours, and the sooner the better. Cut meat into smaller pieces so it chills quicker in the fridge, and then store food in shallow containers to speed up the cooling, only about 2 inches thick. Mm-hmm. You should be eating your leftovers within 4 days. Stuffing and gravy, it's good for about 2 days. And then reheat your leftovers and meat to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything that was a liquid like sauces, soup, or gravy, they're saying you have to get it to a rolling boil. That way there's no bacteria.
Right.
The National Fire Protection Association says the main cause of kitchen fires is unattended cooking. So frying foods, they say, is one of the biggest problems during the holidays. You should always stay in the kitchen when you're frying. And if you see smoke or if the oil smells like it's burning, it can actually burst into flames.
Really?
I guess smoke is a warning signal that the oil's too hot. And you should always have a lid next to any pans you're using for frying. And if a fire starts, just cover the pan and allow it to cool.
So you should turn off the heat, though, right?
Right, exactly. And you never want to use water on grease, or an oil fire can actually spread it. And if the flames are high enough to come in contact with your kitchen cabinets, like your upper cabinets, you should use a fire extinguisher. There are 3 main types of fire extinguishers for the home. You have A, B, and C, or a multi-purpose, which would be A, B, and C. So type A is for wood and paper or ordinary combustible items. Type B is for flammable liquids like grease and oil, and Type C for electrical fires. And the National Fire Prevention Association recommends a fire extinguisher on each level of your home. Some of the top-rated fire extinguishers for your house come from First Alert, Kidde, it's Kidde, and H3R, and it's just the letter H, the number 3, and the letter R. And you want to mount it for easy access, and then train everybody in the house where it is. There's also a product called Stovetop Fire Stop, and this mounts above your stove and it releases a fire suppressant. So if the flames get high enough, it'll automatically release this.
Right.
And what's nice about their range hood unit is there's actually a fuse on it. So if it's high heat or if there's smoke, it's not going to go off. But if you have like a grease fire where this flame is very high, potentially catch your upper cabinets on fire, it ignites the fuse and then the fire suppressant's released. Turkey fryers cause a lot of burns, fires, explosions, and carbon monoxide poisoning during the holidays. So a turkey fryer is this large pot that you fill with oil. It's on a stand with a burner below it, and it's usually connected to a propane tank. and you want that propane tank as far as possible from the fryer.
Yeah, because it sounds pretty dangerous.
Yeah, it's wild. You've got this flammable oil over an open flame, and Underwriters Laboratories, they call it potentially a vertical flamethrower. If the oil ignites, it can create very high flames. You never want to overfill the oil in the pot. It's going to expand about 10% in volume when it's heated. And the turkey needs to be fully thawed and dry. If any ice touches boiling oil, it will boil over and cause a fire. You never want to deep fry a turkey indoors, on a wooden deck, under any type of roofing, under a tree, or near anything that's flammable.
So where are you supposed to do this?
Yeah, pretty far from the house. It's pretty well. You should really go online and take a look at some of the videos that have been done by fire departments that show, like, when you put a turkey in there that isn't fully thawed, it just erupts and boils over, and these flames just burst from it. It's actually pretty dramatic. So you never want to leave the area while you're cooking. You want to make sure kids and pets are far from the area. You want to have a fire extinguisher available for flammable liquids, so that's a type B. You want to use heavy-duty oven gloves. Make sure you're wearing pants and shoes, not sandals. And the National Fire Protection Association says there's about 5 deaths and 900 homes that are damaged by fire every year because of turkey fryers.
Wow.
Which is pretty wild. The National Safety Commission recommends infrared turkey fryers that don't use oil rather than a standard turkey fryer. So these oil-free turkey fryers, they use propane and an enclosed burner, or they use electric, and this chamber creates infrared heat to cook your turkey. So it's kind of like an oven.
Nice.
Some top-rated oil-free turkey fryers are from Charbroil. It's CHAR-BROIL, Butterball, and Masterbuilt.
What are you titling this episode?
You should eat out during the holidays.
Are we just going to continue to talk about food or what?
It's crazy how dangerous food can be. For Christmas trees, the National Fire Prevention Association says about 1/3 of Christmas tree fires start in the family room, the den, or the living room, and results in about 3/4 of all fire deaths from trees.
Wow.
They're saying make sure you check the wiring on all lights and displays you put on your tree before using them. If anything looks frayed or damaged, it can cause a fire, so just replace it. And when you're purchasing new lights, and also check your existing lights, are they certified by a testing lab like UL, CSA, or ETL? And you want to make sure that you're turning off your tree lights and indoor decorations before you go to bed or leave your home. About half of all deaths from home fires are between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And you can use traditional timers or Wi-Fi timers to turn off all your decorations before you go to bed or go to work. And what's great about these smart plugs or outlets is you can control it on an app with your phone, so you can monitor this too. So if you go to bed, if you're laying in bed and you have your phone next to you, you can check to see whether the outlet or the lights are off. And also if you leave for work, you can make sure that everything's off.
That's nice.
Some top-rated smart plugs are from Top Greener, Leviton. It's Leviton, and TP Link. It's just the letter T, the letter P, -LINK. And you want to make sure you're checking the wattage on your lights when you're lighting your tree. You don't want to overload the circuits. So how many things are plugged in on the same circuit that you're plugging your holiday lights in, especially on your tree? Your circuit breaker or your fuse is going to be rated at 15 or 20 amps to protect the wiring behind the wall. And you want to only be at around 80% of the max capacity. So a 15 amp circuit, for example, it can have 1800 watts max on the wires. You'd want to keep the draw around 1440 watts. A 20 amp circuit, the maximum would be 2400 watts. You'd want to keep the draw around 1920 watts. So that's why it's nice to switch to LED Christmas lights and decorations.
Right.
I was reading a Christmas light blog.
That sounds exciting.
And they had one example, 1,000 mini incandescent lights. So they're just the standard, regular Christmas lights. 408 watts was the draw for 1,000 of these. When you switch to LEDs, 1,000 mini LEDs, it only draws 69 watts. So it's going to be a little more expensive up front, although those prices are coming down. But it's going to save you a lot of money over time, and there's a lot less burden on the wiring. This is great for older homes.
Okay.
I think the LED lights are really going to prevent a lot of fires. And you also want to check on how many sets can be connected together. You don't want to overload a string of lights. It can cause a fire.
Right.
Don't use extension cords that are frayed, peeling, or cracking. You just want to replace them.
If you are purchasing a new extension cord, make sure it's UL approved.
Right. UL, CSA, or ETL, some type of independent testing lab.
Because there was a problem a couple of years ago with some cheap imports that weren't UL approved.
Yeah, it was amazing. Some of these were actually bursting into flames, and they found that a few of the fires were started because people were covering them with like an area rug. And these thin extension cords, they need to be air-cooled. And they're saying don't put them into knots. That causes resistance. You don't want to connect it to any surface with like a staple or a nail.
Or connect them to each other.
Right, exactly. You don't want to have multiple extension cords together. A lot of the pros are saying rather than these inexpensive indoor extension cords, just to use power strips. Now they have a lot of power strips with much longer power cords, and you want them rated at 15 amps. You also never want to plug in anything that generates heat into an extension cord, like a space heater, and that's where a lot of these home fires start. Candles cause a lot of home fires, and the top 3 days are Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. The National Fire Protection Association says there's about 8,000 fires a year caused by candles.
Really?
The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission estimates 85% of these fires could be prevented if you never leave the candles unattended, you keep the candles a minimum of 12 inches away from anything that can burn, and you keep candles out of the reach of kids and pets, because I guess those are the main problems. And they're also saying keep the wick trimmed to about 1/4 of an inch, and that's safer, which is interesting.
Really?
Protect the flame with glass covers or chimneys. Use a very sturdy candle holder. And then one of the last recommendations was just use battery-operated candles. Check your smoke detectors and CO detectors before the holidays.
You should listen to our podcast episode about it.
Okay.
Or you could read book 5.
Great chapter in that. And Cindy's almost done with book 6. You want to be careful using ladders for holiday decorations. The CDC says there's more than 5,000 injuries due to falls every year between November 1st and January 31st.
Wow, that's amazing.
And about half of those are from ladders. So I was reading a blog from an attorney who does accident case consultation, and they were talking about ladders.
Right.
And they said the 4 main causes of ladder accidents are picking the wrong type of ladder. You want to make sure that you're checking the weight limits, not using it for what it's designed for, so like a step ladder versus an extension ladder, using a damaged ladder, and then not placing it on a proper foundation, so you're looking for a firm, level surface.
Makes sense.
For an extension ladder, you want to set the bottom feet 1 foot back for every 4 feet of vertical height. You want about a 75-degree angle. And an extension ladder should extend 3 feet above the roof or the surface it's leaning against. You want to stay below the 3rd rung from the top, and don't overreach. Just move the ladder if you have to reach. You want 3 points of contact when you're on a ladder, and stay centered. And for a step ladder, you don't want to use the top 2 steps. If you need to go higher, you need a taller ladder. And don't use an aluminum ladder when you're working with electric. For your outdoor decorations, only use outlets protected by a GFCI, or the outlet itself is a GFCI. And
That's going to protect you against a shock?
Right. And if you're replacing an outdoor outlet with a GFCI, use one that's marked WR for weather resistant, and match the GFCI to the circuit, so either 15 or 20 amps. You wouldn't want to put a 20 amp GFCI on a 15 amp circuit. It could potentially be a fire hazard. And now the new code is you need in-use covers. So these are dome-shaped plastic covers. So when you plug in your extension cord, you can close the cover on it, and it's going to protect it against moisture. You always want to use outdoor-rated, grounded extension cords. And for your holiday lighting, you can get cords with multiple sockets, and these are pretty handy. So a couple of the top-rated cords, there's one from Ultra Power, so it's spelled ULTRA, and power is spelled PWR. So this is 35 feet long. It's 10 feet to the first socket, and then there's 6 sockets 5 feet apart.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
The middle sockets have little LED lights so you know where they are, and they have covers to protect the sockets against moisture. There's also one by Yardmaster. This is 25 feet long. It has 3 outlets. They're all spaced. And Woods, Woods, they have a 25-foot outdoor rated with 3 sockets, and they're equally spaced.
Okay.
To protect multiple connections of extension cords and holiday lights outside, there's a product called Cord Dome that you put all those connections under, and it's going to protect it against snow and water. And a waterproof plug and sockets that you connect multiple light sets together. Mm-hmm. That same company has a product called Twist and Seal, and it just closes over where the plug and the socket go together.
Yeah, I think I've used this.
Yeah, it's cool. Water can't get in there. And the inventor lives right here in Illinois, close to us.
What does that matter?
I think that's kind of cool. I like the inventors. So I spoke to George from George to the Rescue, and he talked to me about AFCIs.
George, Cindy and I were hoping you could help us with some holiday fire safety tips.
Love to. I mean, holidays are my favorite time of the year, many people's favorite time of the year. But there's a lot of things people need to be aware of, especially with fire. That's when they want to have, the fire in the fireplace. Then, it comes the time to go to bed. And what do you do with the coals and making sure that you open up your flue and all that business. Right. So a lot of it is preparation, making sure your fire's smart and you understand, what you're doing in your home, how your home works. Having fire extinguishers on every floor, especially in your kitchen, having smoke detectors that work, and making sure that you change the batteries when you hear the beeping. You just don't take it out and put it on the counter that you go and you put in a new battery, because they save lives. But even more important is preventing them from ever happening and having solutions. So that's where, really being smart, having fire safety. And then a lot of fires, about 34,000 fires a year, start because of electrical issues. And 50% of those, or about half, could be stopped if people had what's called an arc fault circuit interrupter outlet, which just basically detects if there's any sort of loose connection in your walls or damaged wires, and then it stops any electricity going to not just that outlet, but any outlet downstream from that. And I know you know all about this stuff, and sometimes you start talking about wires and things, and you can get too far down the old rabbit hole. But basically the concept is that you're putting in an outlet that's going to kind of be able to be your eyes and ears behind the walls, because you never know what's going on behind the walls unless you built the house yourself.
Sure.
As the holidays come up, you just want to make sure that you're using the right extension cords and lights, for whether it's for indoors or it's for outdoors, that you're not overloading outlets. Again, it's all about knowing your house and knowing your outlets. And if you see an outlet that every time you plug it into it sparks, that's not something funny that you should laugh about. Like, oh, that's the one that sparks, watch out. Right. That's a sign right there. Outlet's telling you time to be changed. Or if there's heat coming from the outlet, or if it's cracked, or if there's black around the outlet, don't keep using that outlet. Matter of fact, immediately don't use that outlet and swap it out. And swapping out an outlet is something that is not that hard to do. But I always say, if you at all don't feel comfortable with it, bring in a licensed electrician. I'm a huge fan of always using pros for professional jobs. And when it comes to most things with electric, I always say, yeah, definitely bring an electrician. That's not even for you to fool with. Something like swapping out an outlet is something that could be done by somebody who is handy as a DIYer, not hard to do. But obviously you want to make sure that you take all the right precautions. You want to turn off power to the outlet, and then double check that there is no power going to the outlet. And then with swapping out with an AFCI outlet, you can see when you're in the aisle at the hardware store, outlets have all different things. They have GFCI, which means the ground fault. An AFCI brand I use a lot is Leviton. They have the Smart Lock Pro AFCI outlet. You grab that outlet, you put it in, replace the old outlet, and obviously connect the grounds and the wires to the correct junctions, and then put it back in, turn on your power, and away you go. And hopefully it doesn't pop. But if for some reason it does, what it's detecting is that you have some sort of loose connection or damaged wire in your wall. And that's where I go back to when you don't know what's in your house. I just had an experience with this where I was looking at a house. I went down, I looked at the electrical box. Electrical box was really good shape. And I was like, oh, it's nice, it's clean. It's, obviously these people, they did good work. They care, what's going on in their walls. And then you follow it, and then what you realize is maybe the box is, but who knows where all the junctions are. And then if it's an old house, you can still have knob and tube in there, and it can be disguised unless you do a thorough inspection. Again, if you're buying a new house, definitely make sure you do a thorough inspection. This is like we found ours, because our first 2 checks, we didn't see it. It was up in the attic. And it's because the electrical box looked so good. But, at some point, junction boxes throughout the house, they had connected the old knob and tube to up-to-date wire. And if there was any looseness, that's where the fire starts. That's, as you know, all too well.
Right.
Like I said in the beginning, the 34,000 electrical fires that happen each year,
Amazing.
half of those could have been prevented with an AFCI outlet in the walls, because they would have known that there was a damaged wire or a loose connection somewhere along that particular stream, and you can then, follow it down the stream and replace it. If you know that this particular outlet is always popping, it's because it has the damaged wire down the line. In the end, it's going to be less expensive to replace that line of wire than a house that burns down. And if that's just the only thing you lose is your house, then you're considered lucky, because imagine everything else that could happen. So just as the holidays come and you want to celebrate everything and you want to have all this joyous occasion all the time together, and unfortunately, what do we hear about all the time? We hear about this terrible fire and this happened, and people overloading outlets or just doing things that are unsafe with fire or with electricity or both.
Well, I like the idea that putting in arc faults, not only will it help prevent something from happening, but you're kind of testing that line, your existing line. So using it almost like a test.
That's what I was saying right before we got on the phone, JC, when we were talking before. You're just so much more articulate. You say these things in such an easy to understand way. Exactly. They are a tester. The arc fault, the AFCI outlet is a tester for the line. It gives you peace of mind as to knowing how this all goes together, because unless you put it in yourself or an electrician put it in themselves, you don't know where the junction boxes are and where knob and tube or old Romex or BX or who knows what is going to connect, and it's compromised possibly in some way, shape, or form.
Well, what's great is it's very similar to a GFCI. If you find the first outlet in a series and you put in your arc fault, it's going to protect and let you know what's happening with everything beyond that arc fault.
Right. That's what's great. I mean, this stuff in new construction, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it has a purpose in all construction because, again, it helps prevent fires from happening. But in new construction, putting in, and again, you have to because of code, but having it at the top of the stream, anything downstream from it, it will cut off power to, and therefore it will not be a source of ignition for any sort of electrical fire. And that's where the Leviton Smart Lock Pro AFCI outlets are, I just think, a cut above. That by swapping out your existing electrical outlet for a Leviton Smart Lock Pro AFCI outlet, it's going to detect the electrical arcing and it's going to interrupt that power source of ignition. It's a solution to not having the fire in the first place. And then just if you notice anything going on with your outlets, just to keep your eyes open and be aware. I mean, there's no silly questions. There's no dumb questions, Safety is paramount with everything. Some of it you can just test with the eyeball test. You're like, all right, well, I can just tell that outlet's not grounded, so it should be switched out. I can, that one's got some black around it. That's a bad thing. There's a story behind that. We should swap that out. And then obviously some are not as obvious, but just to be aware and to be mindful and to be thinking of safety as the holidays come around and at all times. That's really the message I'm hoping to get through here.
People don't realize even if you're plugging things into an outlet and it's loose, the outlet itself isn't holding the plug firmly. That's a problem, and it should be swapped out.
That's a big problem. And people do that all the time for some reason. I've seen it. I've done it myself. Where you put in one of those your phone charger outlets, and why does this thing not stick in here? And you're like, oh, as long as it's propped up at this one angle, it'll stay in.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Again, that just having that open circuit right there. I mean, there's been a lot of advances in technology and safety, but you got to think Murphy's Law. If it can happen, it will happen. So let's just try to prevent it by, having solutions in place.
Yeah, very smart. Hey, George, could you tell us a little bit about your show?
Oh, certainly. And thanks for asking, JC. George to Rescue. It's a show where, we get logged in with the home improvement shows, but really we're a human interest show with a home improvement angle. We come and we help families who are dealing with different things that life throws at them, whether it's a sick kid, a sick parent, somebody's past, obstacles in life that were unavoidable. And the home improvement aspect, projects that needed to be fixed around their home have taken a back seat. And we come in and everyone wants things, but these are real needs. And it's all about the quality of life, making sure that people have the quality of life in their homes that they deserve. And so we help out all sorts of people. Obviously, civil servants always rise to the top of the list, teachers and nurses and firefighters and our military veterans and police officers, but really just anybody who could really use a helping hand and needs a helping hand for their families to have that quality of life. We just finished our 100th episode, which is was pretty amazing, and getting ready to start our 10th season. So we're looking for families to help, and I'm blessed. I say it all the time, JC. I have the best job in the world. I really get to come in and make a difference in people's lives with an amazing team of designers and contractors, and it's been a good run, and I hope it doesn't end anytime soon.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, there's some very touching stories on your show.
Thank you. Yeah, I always say, if they're listening, we should be sponsored by Kleenex because, everyone cries. No, but
And if someone wanted to learn more about your show, where would they go?
definitely check out georgetotherescue.com, and it's George the number 2 rescue on Instagram and on Twitter, and I think just straight up George to the Rescue on Facebook. Check it out. Take a deep dive. Watch a couple episodes. I think you'll be hooked. We have a George to the Rescue group. Just, it's very inspirational stories, and the family continues to grow, and I'm sure there are some listeners out there who could use some help, and hey, maybe we can come and rescue their house.
That'd be great. And if I wanted to learn more about the Leviton AFCIs, where would I go?
Definitely check out leviton.com/AFCI.
Okay.
It's important.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, George.
Hey, JC, really nice to talk to you. I feel like I've known you forever, my friend.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Be well. You too.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, you really should add arc fault protection to your home, especially for older homes. And George's show is really interesting. He helps out a lot of people. You should have the poison control number in your phone, 1-800-222-1222. And if you're thinking about a turkey fryer, I would go oil-free. I like the infrared. Go to LED lights and decorations. It's going to reduce the load on your circuits and update all your indoor extension cords. Go to power strips rated at 15 amps for the best safety, and use LED candles.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Player FM, or your favorite podcast app.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our books, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon, book 1 through 5, soon book 6.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow Cindy on Twitter at FixItCohost.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.